Welcome to a new day and a new age, meaning it's time for a new Ghost Rider, Robbie Reyes. Welcome to the Complete Story Series, where I take trade paperbacks and single issues and I break them down into digestible bites to help you understand. Then I read it dramatically back to you. All alterations to the panel, text, and images are to prevent copyright problems, and all art is owned by its respective companies. Now, Robbie Reyes was the most recent Ghost Rider, and sadly the run didn't last that long. But it appears Marvel is giving him some more attention. They are going to be bringing him into Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 4, as stated at San Diego Comic-Con. Vengeance is coming to the Agents. In East Los Angeles, a young man named Robbie Reyes begins finishing up work for the day. Before leaving, his boss calls him over to give him this week's pay, and when Robbie checks it, he notices that it's a little bit short. His boss tells him that it was an honest mistake, and after getting the rest of his money, Robbie heads home. Along the way, Robbie sees some street thugs picking on a disabled child. The thugs push the child out of his wheelchair and they begin riding on it. But before they can get very far, Robbie runs in, punching them to the ground and beating on them. The boy yells out, "No!" and Robbie looks up to the one that they call Guero, pointing a gun at him. The thugs then beat and leave Robbie and the boy in the alley while they take the wheelchair. The boy Robbie rescued, that was his brother Gabe. Robbie picks him up, and before leaving, Gabe tells him not to forget about his comics. The two of them head home, and Gabe tells Robbie how cool he was coming in like that. He was totally a hero. He showed those guys. And once they get home, Robbie makes dinner for the both of them, and Gabe tells him how tasty the food is. While the two of them are eating, gunshots can be heard in the distance, and Gabe asks if it's firecrackers again. And Robbie tells him yeah. But remember, we never go outside when we hear firecrackers. Later that night, Robbie leaves his home and he heads back to the garage. He heads back there because there's a car that he was working on, and he wants to take it for a little bit of a spin. As he hops in, he tells himself, "Don't worry, I'll bring it back before curfew." He heads out to the street races, where the prize is 50 grand. Even though he doesn't have his own car, he's decided to offer up this car if he loses. He really has no other option. The car is fast, and he knows that he can win with it. So why not borrow it for an hour or two? The racers begin to line up, and once the flag drops, they begin to speed off. Robbie pulls ahead, but when he looks back in his rearview mirror, he sees that the other drivers have turned onto other streets. And before Robbie can see what's going on, a helicopter shines a light down on his car. Robbie tries to outrun the helicopter, turning through various streets, and he ends up in a dead-end alley. He then gets out and he drops to his knees, and the men shout for him not to move. And as he sits there, his eyes begin to widen, and then a spray of bullets hits him all over his entire body, killing him. The men then walk past him, leaving him in a pool of blood, and they open up the trunk of the car, and they report that they found the target being duffel bags full of pills. Once the men take the bags out, one of them lights a match and then throws it on the car, setting the whole alley ablaze. Robbie lays there, and when the fire makes its way towards him, it begins to cover him. As the skin begins to melt away, his body sits back up and a flaming skull begins to scream. The figure gets up and gets back into the car, driving off. On the freeway, the men that shot Robbie begin to shoot at the flaming car that's following them, but their bullets do nothing. One of the men then fires a rocket at the car, but as the car flies through the air, it lands back on the road and continues to follow them. The car begins to pick up speed, and once it gets close enough, the figure shifts gears and plows through the truck and off the highway. The rest of the men travel back to the facility with Dr. Zabo to drop off the pills. Dr. Zabo asks if they've retrieved all of the bags, and the mercenary captain tells him yes. So with such success, we should toast to that, right? Dr. Zabo leads the captain into the back room, and then he begins talking to himself. But why celebrate when we're missing one of the bags? Of course I noticed. Then, the door closes, and screams can be heard, and the rest of the mercenaries sit watching. Then the door is thrown open as Dr. Zabo bursts through it, and he comes out as a giant hulking beast. The beast walks up to one of the men, spitting in his hand, and the mercenary looks down to see an eyeball. Dr. Zabo then tells him, "Get that missing duffel bag." And McCallum tells him, "Yes, Mr. Hyde." Back at Robbie's home, Robbie wakes up screaming, telling himself that he had the weirdest nightmare. But since it's the next morning, he decides to get ready for school, and when he's looking in the mirror, he notices something a bit different about himself. One of his eyes changed to an orange color. After he drops Gabe off, he then heads to class himself, but he's stopped by Guero asking what did he do to his face. There's no way that he recovered from that beating they gave him. Is he wearing foundation? Robbie stops and he feels his face, realizing he's completely healed. No more black eye or sore spots. Over in Hill Rock Heights, the missing bag that Zabo is looking for is actually now in the hands of Grumpy, a big-time drug dealer in the area. He's been selling those pills as roofies to people, and after selling a pill to a guy who's trying to use it on a woman in the room, a junkie comes over to tell Grumpy that he may want to know it looked like someone stole his car last night and was racing it. Once school is over, Robbie heads back to work, but once he gets there, he's shocked to see that the car that he took is back in the garage and in one piece. And for his entire workday, the only thing that he can do is look at the car and wonder, what the heck is going on? Once he goes home, he puts Gabe to bed, and Robbie heads back to the garage to take the car out again. But as he's locking up the garage, people from Grumpy's crew show up to pick up the car. It is his car. The men shout to Robbie, asking what he's doing stealing that car, and they begin to open fire on him. As the men begin to shoot, a hand reaches out, grabbing the wrist of one of the men, and then the guy with a skull for a head stands there, crushing it. He then punches him into the windshield of the car that they drove up in, and he kicks the knee of the other man next to him. The men all climb back into their car, terrified, and they begin to drive off. The figure just watches. He then looks back at Grumpy's old car, and the doors open, and he begins to give chase. But instead of stopping them, the figure drives past the men, leaving a fiery trail. Once the car stops, the figure gets out and then changes back into Robbie. Robbie looks at his reflection in the car, and he sees the skull figure, and he asks, "What are you?" And a voice responds, and it tells him, "No, the real question is, what are we? We're kindred spirits, unstoppable, everlasting eternal friends, Robbie." Eternal? Well, not if you die again, we're not. Who died? You did, partner, and I brought you back to life, kind of like a guardian angel. So Robbie asks him, "Are you an angel?" The figure tells him, "No, what the hell's wrong with you? I'm a spirit, a human spirit that was killed by a bunch of low-life thugs, just like you were the other night, so I decided to bring you back. I'm here to help, give you the power to fight back, fight against all those gangs and bullies, even those parents that left you and your brother alone. All you have to do is trust me, and I'll show you what kind of power we can have." "But how can I trust you?" "How about I show you?" The car then begins to burst into flames, and it drives straight through Robbie. And just as the car is about to hit him, the spirit appears over Robbie, turning him back into the skull-faced man. And the car drives on. "See, you, me, and this car, we're all one and the same." "Get away from me, you maniac," Robbie says as he begins to run. And the spirit tells him, "My name's Eli, and you really can't get away from me even if you tried. This is your destiny. Are you ready to take the wheel and take the power to fight back?" And Robbie tells him, "All right, let's ride." He holds out his arms, and the car begins to drive through him, putting him in the driver's seat, and Eli tells him, "You made the right choice. Together, we're gonna be unstoppable." The next day after school, Robbie heads off to work, and when he gets there, he finds the entire garage was shot up. Eli tells him that people are rubbish, and he knows who did this. He can even help him find him. All he has to do is trust him. Robbie tells him that he does trust him, but where's the car? Over at Grumpy's home, Grumpy's men report that they found his car, but the duffel bags in the back were missing. Outside of the home, McCallum and his men gather around the house and they begin breaking and surrounding everyone. And he reports back in that they found the target, and it's shoot to kill. The mercenaries start opening fire and shooting everyone in Grumpy's group, so Grumpy reaches down, grabbing a handful of the pills, and he eats them. Back in the garage, Eli tells him that even without the car, he can take them to it. They just need to follow the path. Some of Grumpy's men managed to get Grumpy out, but Grumpy was shot in the stomach. They rush to the hospital in the car, when suddenly on the roof of the car, a skull begins to push out of it. Arms then appear to grab the men driving the car, and he pushes them through the roof onto the top of it. Robbie, as the skull-faced man, begins to punch and beat down the men, and then he tosses them off the side. But Robbie then hears a groan from inside of the car, and then Grumpy bursts out looking like the same beast that Mr. Hyde changed into earlier. Grumpy steps out of the wrecked car, and Eli tells him to go, destroy him, annihilate him. Look what he did to our beautiful car. Robbie charges at him, but Grumpy kicks him square in the head and a loud crack can be heard. Grumpy then starts beating down on Robbie, but before Grumpy can finish him off, the car begins to burst into flames and starts to drive itself. The car then rams into Grumpy, knocking him away, and Robbie jumps up, grabbing him by the neck. Eli tells him, "That's it, choke him out!" And then Eli notices something. Grumpy ate so many of the pills that he's starting to grow bigger, and he actually grew an extra pair of arms. Grumpy smashes the ground and he walks away with the duffel bag. And Eli says, "We can't win them all, kid." Back home, Robbie decided to shave his head. And he begins to see Eli in the mirror in front of him. And Eli tells him that our bond is getting stronger, just as they were. Over in Zabo's lab, he continues his research on the pills that he made, and he begins to see the problem. The pills were not effective because they were the wrong dosage. The Hyde serum is to give someone more strength, but when he changed the formula, he accidentally changed the dosage. So once he's done changing it back to where it should be, he'll have a stable and flawlessly effective weapon. Once he's finished, he says that he's ready to make the blue pill. Later, Robbie takes Gabe out for a ride in the new car to go get some ice cream. And as they come to a stop, Robbie looks down the road to see Zabo and his men talking to Guerrero. Robbie's eyes begin to light on fire, and Eli tells him to go ahead. Give Guerrero the beating that he needs. Take back the wheelchair. They can beat him within an inch of his life. Robbie resists and decides that now is not the time. As they drive off, the conversation that Zabo was having with Guerrero was to get information on where they can find Grumpy and the rest of his crew. Zabo promised him money and power, and after giving him the money, Zabo gathers his men and heads off. Once Robbie and Gabe get their ice cream, Eli tells Robbie that if he doesn't eat his ice cream, it's gonna melt, and he doesn't want him to ruin the nice leather in this car. Robbie then tells him that he wants to move them out of this place. Gabe's not safe here. And Eli tells him that he can start that change if he wants. He can burn every single drug corner, gang hideout. They can scorch this neighborhood's evil at its source. Robbie gets a call from work, and after a little bit of convincing, he agrees to show up for a late shift the next day. He just needs to get a sitter for Gabe. So Robbie calls up Gabe's teacher, Mrs. Venezuela, to see if she can watch him while he works, and she tells him that that's fine. So they pull out of the driveway that they were stopped in, and that's when Gabe sees a group of people fighting, and he asks Robbie, what are they fighting about? And Robbie tells him, he's not sure, buddy. But Eli tells Robbie, it's because they're rubbish. People are rubbish. Over in Hill Rock Heights, Zabo and his men have reached where Grumpy is hiding, and Grumpy starts to beat all of the mercenaries coming after him. Grumpy sees Zabo and he tells him that no one will take those pills away from him. But Zabo tells him he doesn't need those pills. It's already in their veins. Zabo begins to drink a vial of blue liquid, and Grumpy asks him, what do you mean by we? And Zabo begins to change into Hyde. He then charges at Grumpy. Once he grabs a hold of Grumpy, he rips him in half. And as it begins to rain blood, Hyde tells everyone that they have the addresses of all of the gang's hideouts. Starting tomorrow, we're gonna begin wiping out every gang in the area, giving a very crystal clear message. This is what happens when you act against Dr. Zabo. You meet the wrath of Mr. Hyde. The next day at work, one of Robbie's co-workers gets a call from his wife stating that there is a gang shootout over in East Hill Rock Heights. That's where Robbie's little brother's school is at, right? Robbie tells him of course, but Eli stops him and says, remember, Mrs. Venezuela was watching Gabe. She lives in that neighborhood. Robbie says he has to go, and elsewhere, Gabe is riding his bus to Mrs. Venezuela's house, and the bus driver looks around to see what she's driving into. A gang war with bullets flying everywhere. She tries to move out of the way, but she ends up hitting a curb, turning the bus over right next to Guerrero and his crew. Guerrero tells everyone that they need to go, but his crew stops to try and help the kids out of the bus. Once all of the kids are out and they see that there's only one left, they realize that it's Gabe, and Gabe thanks them for helping his friends. One of Grumpy's men runs out of the hideout and hits Guerrero and tells him that this is all his fault for snitching, so he's gonna die right now. But before the man can pull the trigger, he's shot by McCallum, who tells him, no, I will be the one shooting him. Gabe tells him, no, you can't shoot him, but before McCallum can fire again, Robbie appears with chains circling his hands. He tightens up the chains, and in one fluid swing, he slams McCallum headfirst into the ground. He then goes and picks up Gabe, and Gabe waves, telling him, you're so cool, you saved us all. Robbie then walks over to the trunk of his car, and he begins to put Gabe into it, and soon Gabe sinks into a portal that Eli made before. He then pops out on the other side, landing in the garage, and one of the mechanics asks, why is Reyes' brother here? Somebody? Anybody got an answer? Robbie then goes back to work, taking down the rest of the mercenaries until he hears a helicopter getting closer. Once it's overhead, Hyde jumps out and lands in front of him, and he says, I remember you. Ghost Rider, right? But something's different. You drive a car now? Ha! Robbie throws one of his chains out, but Hyde catches it and slams him into the overturned bus. Hyde then picks Robbie up and he begins to choke him. You're not the Ghost Rider that I remember. And then Robbie asks Eli, who is he talking about? And Eli tells him, I don't know, but we need to think of something fast because I really don't want to die again. Soon, the car races over, knocking Hyde off balance, and the two of them fall to the ground. Robbie then tries to jump on him, but Hyde knocks him away. The car then drives on top of Hyde's head, and it begins to burn out on his face, tearing up his head. Hyde then gets back up and he says, I'm done playing. And he grabs the pink pills and he starts to eat a handful of them. Hyde then grows larger and larger, but something's wrong. He's overdosing, and then he gets smaller and smaller, and he finally reverts back to Zabo. Realizing that he's won, Robbie rides into the night as the Ghost Rider, but he has one more stop to make. Guerrero and his crew sit talking about how cool Ghost Rider was. Then he appears before Guerrero. A second later, Guerrero and his crew are knocked out, and Robbie takes back the wheelchair. And that is the conclusion of the origin story of Robbie Reyes' Ghost Rider with Eli. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I actually enjoyed the story when it came out, but sadly it didn't last very long. If you really want more of Robbie Reyes' Ghost Rider, let me know, and around the launch of the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 4 when he's going to show up, we'll do probably part 2, and I think there's a part 3 that wraps up Robbie Reyes. There isn't very much more. But I hope you guys enjoyed this. Let me know by giving this video a like. Follow me on Twitter at Comicstorian and Instagram at Comicstorian, and I'll see you next time right here.